I think we can hear the first four together too.
Yeah, and the next two.
Yep. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chairman. We are now live on YouTube.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town of Richmond Hills Committee of Adjustment meeting. Today, our secretary.
Hi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Richmond Hills Committee of Adjustment meeting this evening. Our secretary treasurer is Jamie Pope Herman, and Miss Linda Asiskis is assisting her as Sarah Mauder from the planning department will be our planning representative this evening. I would request a preamble to be commenced. Thank you.
Today's Committee of Adjustment meeting is hereby held as an electronic meeting in light of the current COVID-19 emergency. The COVID-19 emergency is the emergency declared by the Province of Ontario pursuant to Order in Council 518-2020, Ontario Regulation 5020 on March 17th, 2020, and by the City of Richmond Hill on March 20th, 2020, under the provisions of Section 701 and Section 41 of the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. The Committee of Adjustment is authorized to hold this meeting electronically as a tribunal under the Statutory Powers and Procedures Act, in accordance with the Hearings and Tribunal Proceedings Temporary Measures Act. Due to efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, city facilities are not presently open to the public to attend Committee of Adjustment meetings. The Committee of Adjustment for the City of Richmond Hill has been appointed by Council to consider applications for minor variance and consent in accordance with the Planning Act. The committee's decision may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. All appeals and associated fees must be filed directly with the Secretary Treasurer in accordance with the Planning Act. To be notified of an Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, you must request a copy of the committee's decision in writing. Written comments. The public may submit written correspondence regarding agenda matters by email to committee-of-adjustment@richmondhill.ca. All written correspondence received by 4:30 p.m. today has been provided to the committee members electronically. Electronic delegations. Delegates are reminded to please mute your microphone or phone and turn off video until it is your turn to speak. Please make sure your microphone is muted. Please make sure your microphone is not muted when you begin speaking. If members do not have questions or after all questions have been asked, your delegation is over. Please sign off of Zoom or hang up the phone once the committee has made a decision on your application. You can watch the rest of the meeting on our live stream, and the clerk may remove any delegate who does not sign off of Zoom.
All right, thank you, Jamie. I would like to request if any of our members have any conflicts of interest this evening. Carlos, Dean? None, seeing none. Do we have any requests for adjournments or withdrawals?
Okay, Mr. Chair, we have none.
Okay, in that case, we will proceed. Our first four applications, all located at 162 May Avenue, will be heard together. The first two are consent applications, B019/21 and B025/21. The remaining two are related variances, A068/21 and A069/21. I would request the applicant to please proceed. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Adam Layton. I'm a partner with Evans Planning, and we are representing the owner of 162 May Avenue with respect to the two consent applications you noted, as well as the two associated minor variances. I do have a presentation. However, in the interest of brevity, if the council so wishes, I can forego that and just advise that we've reviewed the conditions and comments from staff and have no concerns or issues either with them. And we concur with their conclusions that the consents are appropriate and that the variances meet the four tests of the Act. Otherwise, I am happy to go through my presentation.
We will see if there is any other members who request from the public Any more details? Otherwise, if the remaining two members are okay, we can forego the presentation and proceed with comments from the audience. Okay, all right then. We will forego the presentation for the moment and see if there are any members present who wish to address this application in public. Jamie?
Mr. Chair, we have none.
Okay, in that case, do we have any further comments from the planning department? Sarah?
Through you, acting chairman, we have no further comments.
In that case, I would request a motion. Yes, Mr. Durenzi.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I move that consent applications B019/21 and B025/1, as well as minor variance applications A068/21 and A069/21, all at 162 May Avenue, be approved, subject to the terms and conditions in the city's staff reports.
Moved by Mr. Duretzi, seconded by Mr. Gossi. All in favor? Unanimous? Approved. Our next applications are, again, two applications put together, both located at 0 Briar Hill Boulevard. That would be application numbers B02121 and application B02221. With the application, again, I think it's Evans Planning, but another person. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and member of committee. My name is Harry Zhu, planner from Evans Planning, and here to represent the owner of the property south of Briar Hill Boulevard, about like 40 meters like east of Washington Avenue. And I think I think I would probably follow my colleague Adam's way. Like I do have a presentation ready here, but if it's okay to the committee, and I may forego the presentation, but just to have a brief reminding that the proposed development has been through a zoning bylaw amendment application and a site plan application, and the zoning bylaw application has been approved last May in 2020. And also, there's several application is basically just to fulfill the condition of site plan approval, because we need to create a lot first. And we did have the approval last year, last September, for the same identical plan and proposal. Sadly, that we didn't have enough time to fulfill all the conditions. So, and the owner wants to fulfill further and get into full throttle. So we come back with the same identical plan and proposal and just request another approval. I'm here for question.
Thank you, sir. If it's okay with my members, I will forego the presentation once again and request Ms. Hope Herman if we have anybody in the audience who wishes to address this application.
Mr. Chair, we have none.
Okay, do we have any comments from the planning department?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have none.
Again, okay, in that case, we will proceed with the motion. Yes, Mr. Gossi.
For you, Mr. Chair, I move to approve item E, consent application B021/21, and item F, consent application B022/21, both at 0 Briar Hill Boulevard in Richmond Hill, subject the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Gossi, seconded by Mr. Duretzi. All in favor? It's approved.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Yeah, we will move on to our next application, which is minor variance application A037/21 located at 138 Larat Lane. Would the applicant please proceed? Do we have an applicant?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to let you know that we did receive a letter of support today for 140 Lorette Lane on November 18th.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for having us today. We're proposing to have a deck in our rear yard that encroaches the permitted rear yard encroachment 2.03 meters more than the bylaw provisions, and a pergola that exceeds the height provisions by 0.85 meters. As detailed in the staff report, our request simply serves to enhance the use of our property. We are not changing the nature or use of our property, and our request meets the 4 conditions of the Section 45(1) of the Planning Act to be considered minor in nature. We do appreciate your kind consideration.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody in the audience that will join us today? Don't see.
Mr. Chair, we have none.
Okay. Do the committee members have any comments on this application? We have no comments. Planning Department? Sarah Mauder.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no further comments.
In which case I would request a motion. Yes, Mr. Durazzi.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I move that minor variance application A037/21 at 138 Larrett Lane be approved, subject to the terms and conditions in the city's staff report.
Moved by Mr. Durazzi, seconded by Mr. Gossi. All in favor? Gets approved. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Our next item on the agenda is a minor variance application A058/21 at 414 Elmwood Drive. Mr. Wong, would you like to address this application, please? Hello? I see your name, sir. Mr. Cam Wong, are you there? Would you like to present this application, sir? Hello? Mr. Cam Wong, I see you on my screen, but I have no visual or audio. Okay. If we do not get you, we will have to put you at the end of the agenda and try again. Jamie, would that be appropriate?
Mr. Chair, yes, we can do that.
Okay, so I'm going to give him one more try. Hello, Mr. Cam Wong, can you hear us? We are in the meeting awaiting your presentation for application on 414 Elmwood Drive. Okay, we will have to move you to the end of the agenda. And I'm going to proceed with the next application. So in this case, if we can maybe remove Mr. Wong, and I will go ahead with the next item, which is agenda item A061/21, located at 84 Lagani Avenue. And the presenter here I have as Lifestyle Sunrooms. And I see we have some additional correspondence on this application. Or do we, Jamie? Maybe not, maybe not.
That's right, Mr. Chair, we do not.
No, it's the next one. Okay. So I'm still seeing Mr. Wong on my screen, but maybe we can request his replacement with Lifestyle Sunrooms. While we wait, we shall see.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are having some technical difficulties with our next application. Would we like to continue on?
In which case, do you think Mr. Cam Wong was not at fault? And we just...
Oh, wait a minute. I do apologize. Our applicant for A6121 is here.
Okay.
We can continue on.
So this is A6121, 84 Lagani.
Yes. Yeah, item I.
Let's do that. Okay. Go ahead, sir. Or ma'am. I don't know who it is.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Ahmed. We can hear you, but we don't see you. Go ahead.
Honorable Committee of Adjustment. My name is Syed Ahmed. I'm representing Lifestyle Sunroom.
Okay,
And what we have is asking for a minor adjustment to build a sunroom at the back of the house, as to provide relief from the provision by law 107-86 as amended to permit reduce minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 5.20 meters to accommodate the construction of our proposed sunroom at the back of the house.
yes. All right. We see that. Thank you very much. Do you have anything else to add, or we're done?
We're done. That's
Okay,
all.
thank you. Do we have anybody from the public that wishes to address this application?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay, Planning Department, do they have any further comments? Ms. Mauger?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no further comments.
Okay, in that case, I will entertain a motion for this application. Yes, Mr. Gossi.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve item I, minor variance application A061/21 at 84 Lagani Avenue, Richmond Hill, subject to terms and conditions in the city staff report.
Moved by Mr. Gossi, seconded by Mr. DeRetzi. All in favor? All right. We see two hands and a pencil. It's good. All in favor. Approved. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item J. We have a bunch of correspondence on here, and I believe we have some representation. This would be minor variance application A065/21 located at 88 Moray Avenue. Yes, if we can have Mr. Battaglia to represent this. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Joe, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I don't really have much to say other than what has been done before. I've read the staff report, and I don't have much to add to what is on the staff report. And I believe that this application follows the four tests of the Planning Act and is minor in nature. And I ask that the committee approve the application.
I think, sir, do you have a radio on or something? I don't know. Anyway, there are two letters. They're similar, actually.
Yeah.
Concerning this application, have you had a chance to take a look at it, Mr. Battaglia?
I've seen the letters, yes.
The concerns are kind of permit related, but I'm particularly interested in your response on putting your neighbor of your client into non-compliance of the building code. I think that's an interesting position and how to deal with it. Because if we were not to approve this variance, he would stay in compliance. If we approve this variance, we are putting him at risk. And I don't like that, but let's hear your position on it, please.
What I like to say is that if there's any non-compliance with the Ontario Building Code, that will be caught at the building permit stage by the building department, which would not issue a permit if it doesn't comply with the Ontario Building. So we've done houses similar to this on the street, and we had no issues with the building code. So
the concern I have, sir, is that your client will comply, but it will put his neighbor in non-compliance, which I find a little bit of concern to myself personally, but because I don't think the building department will review his condition while reviewing they will only look at your application and your client's application.
Well, you can put some sort of condition whereby the building department is alerted to if there are any issues. Fellow said. Otherwise,
see, if we approve this application, then it becomes law that he can build it that close to the house. And then legally they can do it and put their neighbor out of compliance, which again doesn't sit well with me. But I will seek opinion from the planning department on this, and perhaps my fellow committee members might have something to say before we move on to the public. Yes, if I would like to address this with the planning department first. Ms. Mauder, do you have any comments on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, can you please, I guess, reference or assist me in referencing the non-compliance for the neighbor, or how that would?
Yeah, let me elaborate a little bit. It's based on the letter written by, I guess, the neighbor immediately adjacent to them. And that really has something to do with a wood burning fireplace, which their neighbor have, and their chimney has to be 10 feet, 2 feet above any roof line within 10 feet as per Ontario Building Code. If we grant this variance, it permits them to build their house closer to the setback. And since it's a 3-story house, it will put the chimney in non-compliance, the neighbor's chimney in non-compliance to that particular clause of the building code. So the reason I'm concerned is that the applicant will comply with all the building codes, but because his building is close to the neighbor who is objecting or is expressed a concern will no longer be in compliance, and that would be Mr. and Mrs. Hurd.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to safeguard their interest in this case. If we can put a condition that they look at the neighbor, once we approve legally, the client can do whatever they want in this case, and the neighbor is then left holding the bag. That's my concern. It's an unusual situation, I must admit.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, this would be reviewed at the time of the building permit stage. It is an interesting predicament, I must say. I don't know enough from the building code to speak to this.
I
but
agree.
At that stage,
the person objecting used to be the head of the building code building department. So we need, and I am an architect,
I'm aware, yeah.
I can understand the issue. And that's why I'm expressing a concern that I don't even know what kind of language we can use to protect the neighbor. Like maybe we can say that this variance is subject to the condition that their chimney doesn't contravene the building code. Is that something that we can insert, Ms. Operman?
Or we can, if I can
interject. Are you
interject.
willing to do that, sir?
If I can interject here,
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know if there's some way to say that we will increase the height of the chimney if there's an issue with his chimney being too low.
At your cost.
We will undertake at our own expense to ensure that the chimney complies with the building code.
Okay.
So that he is not suffering from lack of complying with the building code.
Okay, because I'm not too concerned about their other concern, which has to do with the floating reinforced foundation or whatever. That is a building code issue.
Yeah.
So in that case, I'm so sorry to take up all this time, but I just wanted to clarify this and make sure everybody understands this. I would request if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to address this application, please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, we have Rob and Lorraine Hurd.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Mr. and Mrs. Hurd. I hope you heard the preamble to this proceeding. Go ahead, sir. Good afternoon. We can see you. You are muted.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Were you able to listen in on the?
Yes,
initial-
yes, we were.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
The issue with so you have to excuse me. I have Parkinson's and I'm having a
He's
tremor.
having tremors right now.
So anyhow, I'll try to get the message across. The chimney is one issue, but the bigger issue is the angle of repose, because
We don't have a basement.
the owner and the architect, I've dealt with the architect here in the past.
Yes.
They went in without knowing what the situation is on the south side of their property. I'm on a floating raft. Joe could probably has, you're proposing an 8 or 9 foot basement in this new dwelling, which is typical for.
What we can do, and typically what's done is there's shoring.
Yes, that's one condition because.
Sir, can I please interrupt? If Mr. Hurd, if you can voice your concern and then we'll get Mr. Battaglia to respond.
Okay. Well, the response to him raising the chimney, again, do we want a chimney that's it's a insulated, it's a super vent chimney, so it's not a brick chimney. So now you're going to ask, the option is put a. Sorry. So anyhow, the chimney, would you want this massive thing sticking out of the roof of your house for 10, 15 feet maybe? Because guaranteed once they get down into the excavation stage, they'll have to address the shoring prior to digging for foundation because, again, I'm on a slab on grade, and with the angle repose, he cannot meet that angle repose. So the soil will fail. We have a high water table. We have sandy, silty soil conditions. He's got everything going against him for this foundation. So you'd have to address the shoring as the main issue, because if the soil fails, we could have a dwelling into his excavation, which I don't want. So again, the other issue is the chimney. Without maybe redesigning the front, I haven't seen any drawings. I'm doing this just based on past experience, and with the benefit of without the benefit of drawings, my comments might be a little tainted. But that's where I stand. My big 2 concerns are the chimney and the bearing capacity of the soil. And he'll find once he excavates, he'll probably get down to about 4 feet, because in this area we have the water table is approximately 4 feet. You can check with anybody on the street that's built, and they've had to address it. Because just within the last 2 years, we've had a house just built on the south side, and they were lucky I was around because they stopped at 4 feet, because if not, they would have had just a swimming pool. My house might have been into that excavation.
Okay, sir, that is actually a building department and engineering issue out of our jurisdiction.
I know it's out of your jurisdiction. I just want it on record because the fact that if something happens, if the town wants to mitigate its issues, I really don't want a house collapsing. And I think Joe doesn't want to deal with his insurance company if he has such an issue. So the thing is again,
agreed.
Most of the issues, those are the 2 main issues that have to be addressed. And some of this could have been mitigated if they simply knocked on the door, and because I've done it for the gentleman beside on the other side of me, gave him all the information, and it made them a little bit wiser on what's happening in the area.
Okay, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. Do we have any other members of public? I see some other names. Ms. Hoperman.
Through Mr. Chair, we do not.
You don't. Okay. In which case, I would request the applicant to please address the 2 concerns. So we've talked about the chimney and the concerns. They would like it.
Typically in these situations, and I've done other buildings where they have an issue with the angle of repose for the foundations. We engage engineers to do a shoring drawing as part of the building permit that town would request. A shoring drawing done prior to constructing anything to protect the neighbor's lot. So that can be taken care of. And as I said, if we can increase the height of the chimney so that he doesn't he doesn't contravene the Ontario building. And with that's what we can offer to do.
Okay, thank you, sir. So before I go to my committee, I would like to request Ms. Hoperman, is it possible to add a condition? Should this cause any contravention of building code to the neighbors, that the applicant undertakes to remedy that? I think that's the simplest way to word it, but.
Through Mr. Chair, yes, we can add a condition to that effect.
All right. In that case, since we have no more public
Raise the hand.
to address, do the members wish to say anything? Mr. Duretzi or Mr. Dawsey? Yes, Mr. Duretzi.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to comment on the concerns of the herds. I think they have some serious issues here for consideration, and I would strongly encourage them to write to the city's building department, irrespective of the fact that we might be adding a condition here this evening, to put these comments in writing to the building department as well, just so that, you know, they have a bit of a heads up. So when this application does come before them, they can address the issues in accordance with the building code for both the chimney and the foundation, given your slab on grade and the requirements for shoring, as well as a soils report that identifies the type of soils and their bearing capacity, as well as the level of the water table. So I would encourage you to do this. And yes, these are building code issues that will come up at the building permit stage. Mr. Battaglia has been kind enough to agree to have us add a condition, but I would encourage you to put this in writing to the building department as well. Those are my comments, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Duretzi. Mr. Dawsey.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any comments. I think Mr. Duretzi did a fabulous job on summarizing that.
In that case, I would request a motion with adding the condition we discussed. Go ahead, sir. Mr. Duretzi.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would move that minor variance application A065/21, located at 88 Moray Avenue, be approved subject to the conditions in the city's staff report, with the addition of the clause that will confirm adequate Ontario Building Code compliance with the house that's being constructed adjacent to the neighbors. If you want to change the wording specifically, Mustafa, in accordance with what you had stated, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I was more interested in protecting the code compliance of the neighbor and their.
Isn't that what I said?
Okay, maybe we can have Ms. Herman Hope repeat the condition.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have from Carlo that we want to add a condition that is adequate building compliance. However, I think Mustafa, you had mentioned previously that we want to have adequate building compliance and protection of the neighbors.
Okay, can I just reword the whole thing if you don't mind? Okay. In my opinion, the condition should read, and if Mr. Battaglia agrees, that the granting of these variances, should the granting of these variances put the neighbor's property in non-compliance of the building code, the applicant agrees to rectify that matter at their expense. So it's more generic, and it could be just the chimney or it could be anything else.
I agree.
That's fine.
Is that okay, Mr. Duretzi?
Yes.
Comment before you vote on this?
Go ahead, Mr. Hurd, but
Yeah, Mr. Duretzi, I issued that letter to the building department, Scott Simpson and Will Kang, the day before I sent the email to Jamie. So they're well aware of the situation. But if you know yourself in the past, if you submit drawings without them knowing the situation around, yeah, the building department can review their drawings in compliance with the building code, but they have no knowledge of the existing until they actually get on site. Or like in my case, I forewarned them. So
okay,
they're aware of the situation.
Excellent.
And if the letter needs to be rewritten in some manner, I will sit down and do that. I have lots of time, but it just takes me a long time.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
So do we have that condition in now? No. Ms. Herman Hope.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the applicant. I will have to, Lyndon, I will have to go back to this too. But I do have that the applicant agrees to rectify any non-compliance of the building code.
That is cost to the neighbor. That's really important.
Yes.
Not only on their property.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. In which case, we need a seconder of this motion. Mr. Gossi, thank you. All in favor? It's approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming and expressing your concerns.
Thank you.
Our final application of the evening, I believe, no, there's two more. I have application K, which is located at 57 Beaufort Hills Drive. That's application B016/21. And that is our last application. We do have a bunch of correspondence on this. And I assume everybody has had a chance to go through it. We will request the applicant to please come forward and present this application. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of committee. My name is Joanna Fast. I'm a planner with Evans Planning. This property was recently the subject to an application for zoning bylaw amendment that was approved in May of this year at the local planning appeal tribunal, now the Ontario Land Tribunal. The rezoning application or the rezoning approval exempted the property from the requirements of an amending bylaw that was on the property. It amended the provisions of the parent bylaw, or it amended the site specifics bylaw and allowed for the provisions of the parent bylaw to apply to facilitate the severance of the property to create a total of 2 new lots. The proposed consent application complies with all the relevant standards of the zoning bylaw, and the lots will be compatible with the sizes of the lots on the same street and within the neighborhood. At LPAT, discussion was had with respect to compatibility, tree protection, drainage, and urban design. And we also committed to having the future dwellings on these lots be subject to site plan control. The committee will note on condition number 9 that there's a condition with respect to site plan control. On November 10th, council approved bringing the subject property into the city's site plan control bylaw. And the site plan control process will review plans for the actual houses that are going to be built on these lots and will ensure that there is appropriate tree protection, grading and drainage controls, and compatible design for the new homes. We acknowledge the area residents' concerns that were raised at LPAT and through the correspondence that we received for this evening's application. However, we are confident that the development of the proposed lots will be an appropriate addition to the Beaufort Hills neighborhood, and that the future site plan review process will ensure that the city's design and technical standards are met. Should this committee have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Do we have any additional correspondence to what we all have at present? I believe not, otherwise you would have advised us, Ms. Herman Hope.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay. In that case, do we have any audience presentation this week?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have Howard Bennett.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, Mr. Bennett. We don't have audio. You're muted. Okay, good. Now we can hear.
Actually, I would like to make a comment after Mr. Stevens' presentation, because he has summarized a number of the points that I'd given.
Okay, okay. Is he also present this evening? I will request Ms. Hope to put him on.
Good evening. It's Bob Stevens here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the application for severance. I did submit a document. Hopefully you have it in front of you because some of the illustrations are quite pertinent. So three things that I'd like to talk to you about is the need and necessity for severance. I wanted to highlight, and I'm sure you probably know this, but it'll allow me. There are at least a dozen projects within the Beaufort Hills area right now that are either near completed or underway, none of which have a severance. Only two others, as the committee I'm sure is aware, have ever been severed. And one was for 125 Coons Road, and I was involved with that as well. And the second was on Cynthia Drive, and I don't know much about it. It appears that they tore the garage down so they could sever, so they could build another house, and now I think both properties are up for sale, so I apologize, I'm speculating. But nonetheless, the ratio of development that can go on in our area, and by the way, I don't disagree with development. I just would like to have good development, not bad. Severing this property, as I'm sure everyone's aware, it is a part of the natural core. And in my presentation that I've sent to you, there are a number of issues that I'll talk about in my second bullet on drainage. But back to the need. Why do we need severance on this lot? There is, like I said, a majority of development going on where homes have been demolished and rebuilt, or major renovations done to make them look more modern, and yet none of them, well, except for two, was there ever a need for severance. So I'd like to question the need and why even throughout the LPAT report, I constantly ran into words like minor changes and very modest infill scenarios. So my question to the committee is, how do we justify all the risk that can happen with the severing of this property, including, I'll cover in my point 2, drainage issues, trapped water, flooding of basements, pooling of water at the back of Lupine Avenue as it meets up with the back of Beaufort Hills Road properties, just a tremendous amount of water problems. So question is, why is it necessary to sever? I'm not really thinking I'll get an answer, but I think it's fair to me as a resident in the area next door to the property that we understand that we are making changes for the betterment. The two proposed lots are smaller, obviously, than the majority of the lots on this street. Yes, there's 3 homes that are on smaller lots, all arranged, actually, I understand, from the original purchasers years ago. And then the rest of the lots, the majority of them, are large estate lots that have larger estate homes and are separated from each other by more than the minimum bylaw, which is, I think, 5 feet. And the other consequence of severing this is the need to take down more trees to build the homes. And the homes that were provided in the LPAT report have some questions we'd like to ask about it, about the drainage and the tree protection zone and all of that. This lot has over 100 trees or 200 trees on it, of which it was hard to follow with LPAT how many are actually going to be taken down, but more than once different numbers were provided. The one example that I felt was inaccurate was the declaration by the expert that only 2 trees would need to come down in the front of the property to allow effective construction traffic. I'm not an expert either, and I don't pretend to be, but it would be challenging if you only could take 2 trees down and still expect all of the construction traffic back and forth for both the demolition and the excavation and the building. So I'll take a bit of a breather if that's okay, if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'd like to move on to the drainage issues that we have.
Please, sir, we do have limited time, so we would appreciate you moving along.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll be fairly quick on drainage. I'm sure you've heard all about it. In my document that I provided you are 3 or 4 pages of 4 examples of drainage issues on adjacent properties.
Yes, we see them. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you in the document? Has anybody got the document? I wanted to highlight the picture on page 4 at the bottom.
I have it in front of me, and I'm sure members do as well. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the property directly north of the natural core 10-foot right-of-way in that parcel of land, which has to be, I believe it has to be not built on, so that only the land to the south of that 10-foot right-of-way, it can be divided into 2 lots. And perhaps that's why the lots are a little smaller. My understanding from the city is that one of the lots proposed is the smallest lot in all of Beaufort Hills. So this water picture tells a lot of stories. If any of you have this online, does anybody? There are 2 movies on page 6. They're MOV files. If you get a chance to take a look at it, please do. They show running water 2 feet, not even 2 feet below the surface of the properties immediately behind the subject property. So I'm not an engineer, and I can only use common sense that if you disturb that property to put 2 homes in there, you have a high likelihood of more drainage problems. The picture on page 6 of the gentleman's fence on Lupin Avenue is all caused by excess water just below the surface. So on the drainage subject, Howard, did you want to talk on drainage or anything else? I'll wrap up otherwise.
Okay, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. We are short of time, but go ahead, Mr. Bennett.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I've just wanted to have Bob make a few points on that because his report included some of the material that we had supplied to him relating to this. And we've had discussions both in this and in the LPAT as well as the council meetings previously on this. So a lot of this information is consistent and repetitive, but I have 4 main points that I wanted to emphasize. One is obviously the drainage issue. As you can see from the pictures that you have on Bob's attachments, we have water all the time. We have right at the back. That is a huge issue, and with a bigger house being put in, 2 houses putting down, and they're going to be built higher, I'm sure, we're going to have even more. So how is that going to be addressed? The preservation of the trees. We've had, I know, many discussions. Yes, it's, quote, not a significant woodlot, but it is a significant forest presence in this property. And the number of trees that they've presented as to what's going to be taken out, I am not very optimistic that those are actually going to be the situation. It just seems too unlikely that there's more trees not going to be taken out. So I would ask that this be strictly enforced and checked that that is actually following what the plan is, that there will be less trees actually taken out as they present it. The other point relating to the trees is trees absorb a significant amount of water. Less trees means we're going to have even more water issues. So this will make more drainage concerns. The last part was really an extension out of the pictures. The development of the Lupin properties were significantly higher land than the original land that was there. I'm expecting that the property being built at 57 is also going to be higher. So all of this leans that properties like 59 and 61, our neighbors, were in the lower level. What's going to happen? The water's going to go there. So I'm almost to the stage, are we going to have a pond in the back of our house? This has to be really a significant issue in regards to flooding and that's going through. It hadn't been addressed properly with the Lupin situation, and I'm very concerned whether this will be, again, addressed properly here. So we need assurance that you will make sure that there is proper drainage that's going to take care that we won't have flooding going on.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you very
Bennett.
much.
I really appreciate all the concerns raised by both of you guys. I would, before I just quickly move on to my members, does the applicant have any response at present? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So I can address some of these issues because they were brought up at LPAT through our rezoning application. There were other severances that have taken place in this area. There was 125 Coons Road, which is around the corner from the subject property. That also went to the OMB for approval. It went to the OMB for the rezoning approval, and then it went to the Committee of Adjustment and also went through site plan control. And there was the other application in the neighborhood on Cynthia Crescent, like the resident mentioned. As far as the natural core, we had, through our rezoning application, we had an ecologist examine the woodlot feature and any features in the surrounding area. And it was determined that it was not a significant woodland. And so the natural core designation in the official plan gets refined through environmental studies. We do believe that this is modest infill. You know, these lots are the same size or bigger than the lots to the north, just north of the subject property. If you see in your staff report, I think there was a location plan with the property it's circled. You can see that the three properties to the north, number 59, 61, and 63, these properties are almost of equal size. There's a variety of sizes of lots in this neighborhood. If you're driving around, you can see that the lots on the majority of the streets, there's various lot sizes. And so we're not being inconsistent with what's already on the street and directly beside our lots.
Okay, sorry, may I interrupt?
Would you please let her finish? I will allow you to.
I'm sorry, I apologize. It was timely.
We also did take a look at the flooding because that was raised as an issue at LPAT. We had an engineer do a preliminary drainage plan, and it showed that the drainage will be slightly improved from the existing condition, but that through our future site plan applications, a very detailed grading and drainage plan will be prepared. And all the technical requirements of the city for pre and post drainage flows will have to be met. As well, with respect to tree protection, we did have an arborist. Again, that will be addressed through site plan control. We tried to minimize the number of trees that are to be taken down through this process. We do have over 200 trees on the property, and we're proposing to remove 35, and 25 of those are healthy trees. And so that can be further refined again through our future site plan control process.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will get back to you, sir, in a brief moment.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to state that this property at present is not subject to site plan control, but we have a condition in this approval that it be subject to site plan approval. So when we approve, if we choose to approve this application, there'll be a condition attached to this approval that the current request to add site plan control is a requirement of this approval, just to allay some concerns of the residents. You can go ahead now, sir. Sorry.
Yeah, I apologize. I have a colleague on the line. Her name is Heather Fagan, and she wished to speak to this file as well.
Okay, we'll have to ask her to be really brief and not repeat anything whatsoever that's been already said. If she agrees to that, then please go ahead.
Heather, can you hear me? Go ahead.
Hello? Hi,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Fagan, we can hear you.
Yes,
I would
hello.
urge you to not repeat anything that's already been said, please.
Sure. Good evening. My statement is also in opposition to the request for severance, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have two issues which I would like to have put on the record. I live at 33 Lupine Crescent in Richmond Hill. My backyard is kitty corner to the subject property located at 57 Beaufort Hills. This property is designated natural core. As you've heard, it has over 200 very tall, 60+ foot tall trees that are mature, and they must be protected. This is a heavily wooded lot. You've heard it described as a forest. This property is part of a natural corridor, and it does connect different significant woodlots. And as you've heard, it's at grave risk of destruction by the proposed development. We have two positions. The first is that the city must ensure that there is tree conservation on this site and not just tree replacement. Small trees replacing the majestic trees that identify this community and provide compelling ecological substance is unacceptable. Number two, it's our position that the city must ensure that the drainage issues are addressed, because they are considerable and they are known issues.
Okay, we heard both of those, ma'am, already, but we'll allow you to be extremely brief unless you have something new to add. Thank you.
You've already heard that the trees that are on the property right now do provide drainage, and removing them through destruction poses more additional problems. My last point, just in comment to that made by Ms. Fast, is that the size of the lots would be consistent. The size of the lots with severance is smaller than those in the community. This is an estate home lot that is being targeted to be divided into two. So again, our position is that this project would quite frankly be an environmental shame for Oak Ridges and Richmond Hill, and it will really set an abysmal precedent for the ecology of this area and this unique established character of this mature estate community. Thank you.
I really appreciate that last comment. Thank you for putting it in context, and really appreciate you coming tonight. Anybody else wish to speak to this application tonight from the public?
That's you, Mr. Chair. We have none.
Okay, in that case, I would see if my members have anything to add. Any further comments? Because there was so much drainage involved. Mr. Duretzi, you go first. And then Mr. Gassi, I'll come back to you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief. First and foremost, thank you to the residents in the area who provided the information and the issues surrounding your properties. My approach to these applications is to actually read your letters first and then dive into the staff report just to get a context on it. So thank you very much for that. So I have a question for Jonah. Has council actually made the decision for site plan control, or are we still waiting for that decision to be made?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the decision has been made by council on November 10th, to bring this into the site plan control bylaw.
Okay, so that's perfect. One of my concerns would have been the timing on a condition with these kinds of things. But anyway, that's great. So that gives me some assurances that under that process, site plan control process, the servicing and grading plan will dive into all of those issues regarding stormwater management and water balance management. And I can tell you that the techniques that are used today are much different than those that were used 15, 20 years ago. So sometimes these developments provide an opportunity for some pretty substantial improvements. with the use of French drains and infiltration galleries, as well as ensuring that all of the rainwater rooftop drainage is directed primarily to the front where the road is and where the ditches and storm sewers are. So I'm confident that through that process, engineering will have a thorough look at this. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duretsi. For the benefit of our residents, Mr. Duretsi is a professional civil engineer and an expert in these fields, so I have a lot of comfort in his comments. Yes, Mr. Gossi.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just had a couple of questions. So the first is, given that this will be under site plan control, and I imagine that the building department will also be looking at it, what type of, and this is a question for the committee or who would like to address it, what type of verification or validation is done, like a pre and a post analysis for, let's say, tree removal, drainage, grading plan, etc., where somebody would be, let's say the house was completed in the summertime, who would do that after, say, a complete season has gone by, to make sure that all of the plans that are put in place and all of the assurances regarding grading and drainage were met, and that the proposed result is actually indeed met. So we don't have a situation that a year after the house is built, we have a catastrophe at the neighbors' homes.
Well, I will let Mr. Duretsi address that again, but to the best of my knowledge, once the grading is completed, it needs to be recertified by the engineer for drainage. Go ahead, Mr. Duretsi.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, that's quite true. Again, through the site plan approval process, there'll be an erosion and sedimentation control plan. There might even be a stormwater management brief, as well as a detailed grading and house siting plan, which is going to take into consideration the issues that are on the subject property as well as the surrounding properties. So under that process, the developer cannot discharge any water from their property onto a neighbor's property, but they do, however, have to manage water that's coming to them from a neighbor's property. So that's basically how the Drainage Act will work in this circumstance. So they're not going to be affecting or increasing flows to a neighboring property, and they have to capture and contain everything within the subject property. So to Mr. Gossi's point there, in terms of some of the reports have already been done, Conservation Authority had noted that a natural heritage evaluation was prepared, for example, and they've deemed that the trees that are on that lot are not a designated woodlot. So that's just one example of the types of reports that might get presented. But a lot of this will come out through the site plan approval process.
I believe the concern was post-construction or verification that drawings as done have been followed.
All of the features identified on the stormwater report and the plan need to be inspected and certified by the consulting engineer or Ontario Land Surveyor. And oftentimes the city also require photographs to demonstrate that, infiltration galleries were constructed, French drains were constructed, etc.
Good.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to ask one follow-up question for the committee. So that being said, do the residents should have an opportunity to then engage the inspectors or comment to the inspectors to be able to say, hey, this is what's happening, post-construction? Or is this just going to be something that's going to be done in August after the house is completed in May? As opposed to see.
Yes, Mr. Duretsi, did you want to?
Yes, just to comment on that, the neighbors can actually get involved in the process ahead of time. And as I had mentioned to some other applications, these comments, they're all very good comments that were made in terms of drainage. It sounds like there's a lot of drainage issues on the surrounding properties, and maybe some that are on the subject properties, which might get rectified, but still the surrounding properties have issues. So I would bring those issues to the attention of staff. And there was a comment there about, somebody's rear yard catch basin that's too high. It doesn't grab any water. Well, that catch basin should be removed and replaced or cut down a little shorter, and maybe they can install some, some French drains or some sub drains on that catch basin, as well as fixing that swale that somebody had indicated had a high point on it or was, not allowing the water to drain to the road. So absolutely get involved in the process and for the betterment of everybody.
I volunteer my name.
It's okay. I don't think we can take your name down at this point, but like Mr. Duretzi suggested, it's in your interest to follow up with the building department and the inspections department. It's as a separate department from us. We don't have jurisdiction on enforcing that, but they do. In any case, I would request that we now close the comments and questions and proceed with a motion. So I am waiting for a motion. Yes, Mr. Duretzi.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would move that consent application B016/21 at 57 Buford Hills Drive be approved, subject to the conditions in the city's staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Duretzi, and seconded by Mr. Gossi. All in favor? It gets approved. Thank you very much, everyone. We do have one other application that we have put to the end of the agenda, and that is application number A058/21 located at 414 Elmwood Drive. If Mr. Cam Wong is present, I would request him to please present that application.
Wasn't about severance at all. Done deal.
Okay. I can hear you. Is that Mr. Cam Wong? Hello? There he is. You are still muted, Mr. Wong.
Hi.
I can hear you now. Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Wong.
Hi, how are you?
Very good.
So
Yes, please
sorry
go
for-
ahead and present the application at 414 Elmwood Drive.
Yes. This is for my own house. I'm living in this property right now, but it's a small, very tiny little bungalow.
Okay.
So we are planning to build a bungalow loft for my own family. And we are asking for the minor variance. And we did study my neighbors. There were a lot of new development in my area. And so we are proposing the changes as laid out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Is anyone in the audience there to address this application?
Mr. Chair, we have none.
All right, Planning Department, do you have any comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no further comments.
And I apologize for not calling you in the previous application. It got too long. Anyways, in this case, I would request my members if they have anything further to say. My fellow members, yes, Mr. Gossi. You can move or say something. Either way, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the initial concern that I have is the deficiency for the maximum lot coverage. This seems to be egregious. And I was just doing a comparison of the lot size of the subject property to some of the other properties on the street that also have obviously been redeveloped with larger homes. And I have a concern that 13.67% is significant. It's I don't think I've ever actually seen a maximum lot coverage deficiency that high as a percentage of the bylaw requirement.
Okay.
So I suppose my question to the applicant, Mr. Wong, is, what's the rationale for your home being that large, taking up that much of your lot? It's going to be, looking over your neighbor's yards.
The dwelling that I'm proposing is a bungalow loft. So the coverage is mostly on the first floor. And I have just a little loft on the second floor. So maybe that is the number that make it looks bigger. So, and I'm not trying to build a monster home or anything like that. And I'm just trying to be coherent with my neighbors. So I think the deficiency that I'm asking is comparable to my neighbors.
Do we have any sort of survey regarding the neighbors and the deficiency that they had in those properties? And have we seen anything that high before? Because in a few weeks, there's going to be another application that's going to come down, and they're going to cite this particular application, and they're going to look for a 15% deficiency. And then where does it end?
Would that be a question for
Yeah,
Ms. Powder?
that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So, I think, sorry.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of other deficiencies or other variances approved in this area, I don't have that information on hand. What I would suggest is, I guess, to the comments made by the homeowner, the applicant on this proposal, is in terms of the lot size, perhaps, in comparison to the adjacent neighbors. I don't have the information in terms of whether or not other variances in this area have sought variances to that extent. However, there is a difference in lots fabric within this neighborhood.
Yes, Mr. Durazzi. Go ahead, Mr. Durazzi.
If I might comment to Mr. Gossi, just if it helps, it's a fairly wide and shallow lot in terms of the frontage is about 70 feet and the depth is 105. In terms of, the side yards that they're proposing for this application, they're quite generous. So the impact from the street is essentially negligible from the size of the house. You really don't see it from the street line, so there's no impact that way. And as the applicant had mentioned, it's a bungalow loft, and typical zoning standards for a 2-story is about 35% coverage, and for a bungalow it's about 40% coverage. So you're technically 3 percentage points over the 40. So it's in my opinion, it's fairly reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durazzi.
Thank you.
I would request a motion in this case. Can we have a motion, sirs? Okay, Mr. Goss. Go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, just 1 second, please. I was just referencing my documentation. I apologize.
No problem.
Because I have to go back here. And
well, yeah, it was number H, agenda item H.
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that item H, minor variance application A058/21 at 414 Elmwood Avenue is approved, subject to terms and conditions in the city staff report.
Moved by Mr. Gossi, seconded by Mr. Durazzi. All in favor? 2 hands and a pen. Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jamie, do we have anything else to discuss after the meeting is closed?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, we just have to do our usual minutes and adjournment.
Okay, we'll wait for it to close and you advise me accordingly. Thank you very much.